One of the things our projects have in common is the fact that we approach them as large objects that we want to structurally and sculpturally transform.
And the process is changing the nature of the house too.
Yes, and that's when the big idea starts to begin a process or an adventure in the changing of the structure itself, and then it gets into where the structure is, the site itself, and how it ties into the site and ties into the concept of where it is.
These opportunities we get typically involve a house that's ready for demolition, and allows us to do whatever we want with it without much consideration of, the structural integrity, the weather tightness. All of those issues kind of go away when we realize that it's going to be torn down in the end. And so that ephemeral quality allows us to manipulate a structure, pierce walls and planes, and hopefully involves the viewer in a different kind of participation with the architecture. So a good example of that is the Sharp house. That was a house that came to us. It had a bad fire in it and was beyond repair. We were able to gut the interior walls and build a structure through it, which allowed us to create the cavern.
Obviously, a big aspect of Sharp was how was the daylight going to react with the space that we've created and the copper, and how it was going to reflect it. Dean had made a model to kind of mimic it and how it might play with, and we used spotlights, and we were kind of guessing what would happen. And like a lot of our projects, there's always that happy surprise, and the happy surprise is that it exceeded our expectations when it came to lighting up Sharp and lighting up the space and making the house itself a lantern in some respects. Secondly, it created a space that became a communal space for people to be part of the house in a way that they would never think of being part of a mid-century burned out house in the middle of a suburb of Houston. But here they are thinking about where they are in a whole different manner.
Yeah, there's the whole phenomenological aspect of the reflectivity of the copper and the way the light plays through there as the daylight changes, as people interact with it, as the cars go by. That is just ever changing and really quite phenomenal to see.
And so Ripple involved basically the beginning of a sculptural process where you drop a pebble into a pond and it creates a ripple throughout a space. And so the sculptural action created that ripple. One sculptural cut would begin the next, would begin the next, would begin the next. And so it was kind of a growing project that we really didn't know what was going to look like in the end.
Ripple, we manipulated really every wall of the house, cutting into it and through it, allowing passage, allowing light, allowing the view through the entire house.
The interesting part about this project is that we are offered a house for a 1-year time limit. So that was a huge difference between the usual very short period of time that we have to construct these pieces and their time-lapse, very short period of time after.
There was much more of a quantity of wall space there for us to manage, so it was going to take a lot of time.
And the other aspect, we really didn't know how was it going to be animated by the people that walked through it. And I could only visualize what legs and arms and people's heads would look like when you're looking through layers of walls. And I think that was the exciting part for me about Ripple was opening it up and seeing that animation of that movement of people and their experience of looking up and down. That part of the work is a big social experiment. We really don't know how people are going to react when they come to open house or when they come to Ripple. So that aspect of it's very interesting to me.
Right, we can imagine what the participation might be like, but until it actually opens and it happens and people show up, there's really no way of knowing. And I think we're always pleasantly surprised when the people do show up and start to interact. And, you see their kind of amazement and fascination and involvement. We couldn't really be happier with the reaction that Ripple got because of the time that people were willing to spend there. It's pretty unusual that you can get people to look at art for more than a few minutes. People spent hours in Ripple. They'd come back day after day, several trips, just exploring the many, many details of the structure, taking it all in, experiencing it as it was.
Okay, with the black and white. Okay. I'd like to get your portrait, and I want to get a little bit of something in the background because it's going to blur the background. I mostly want your face.
The open house project started with the purchase of this small bungalow. We found this on a lot in Alvin, Texas, and in a midnight trek across Houston, it moved from Alvin to Sam Houston Park in downtown Houston. Go that way, this way?
So this house came to us in pretty good condition on the exterior, and the interior was really a raw space right down to the 2x4s and old wood. And it was perfect for us to begin as kind of an empty palette to start developing where we would cut these circular holes.
So once we had the house here, we started working on it and quickly realized that the hardy plank wasn't going to work. Too hard of a material to cut through. It didn't have the sort of vintage quality that we like. So it quickly got taken off, exposing the original siding, much better quality for us.
The process really began as a way of kind of building a drawing, I guess, with these cardboard circles and a collage of what we were going to do.
And this is kind of more the natural process of the artist, right? And figuring out your composition. Because that's really what it was. It was a work in composition to arrange the cardboard circles, which would eventually be the holes, to get the right feel and as you mentioned, fit within the structure of the house. And once we had that together, we were comfortable with the arrangement of how the holes would go. We had to skin the whole interior with plywood to give us an interior surface to work from and also to beef up the structure of the house.
The other aspects of any kind of public art is you have to think about the structure itself. How is it going to stand up for 9 months to a year? How is it going to stand up to people coming, visiting every day? And that was the problem we had to solve with the holes. And to solve that problem with keeping them watertight and keeping the structure sound, that's where the PVC pipes came in. The idea of putting a sleeve through the hole to create that clean opening. But as always, we have a pretty good idea of what it might look like in the end, but never understand it completely until the process is you're into the process and you understand how the material works and what the openings reveal and how the structure needs to be redone. And all those things start to become part of the exploration that we go through in all our projects. The final aspect of open house was the fact that the site we're on is a historic site itself. Sam Houston Park is historic. So we wanted to bring that aspect of the past and the present into the piece itself. We talked a lot about how do we wallpaper the interior of the house. The vintage photographs came up as a great opportunity to kind of pull out kind of the history of the past while at the same time looking through the holes and seeing the present.
So the photos are there to present all of Houston, the past, Houston's diversity, people, places, and things. There are recognizable images, maybe some recognizable people, but for the most part, it's a representation, a broad representation of the general public in Houston. Lights laid across the structure of the house. You get a lot of different interactions with reflections off the building. So hopefully people take that in. There's a lot of nuances there. It takes time to see it. It takes coming back.
Exciting. We want to obviously recognize our artists, and I'm going to
Ironic with the projects we've done in the past, the fact that we've been invited right downtown. And the interesting thing about this project, it has a daytime life and an evening life. And so during the day, the park is open. You can come walk through and take part in open house. But in the evening, the park is closed. They close the gates, but the house lights up like a lantern at night. It's a beacon in the middle of the park, and you can see it from the street. It's a beautiful sight, and you should come down here and see it sometime during the evening. It's quite something.
And also during different seasons too, as we go through the year. It'll be interesting for us to watch how it changes through the summer, fall, and into winter.